Welcome to NHL Quick Hits. I'm David Crosby here, and Steel Roden didn't quite make it back in time from his trip, but we'll be back together next week. I hope everyone had a safe and happy holidays and New Year's, and while things are a little bleak, with COVID throwing a wrench into the schedule and forcing the World Juniors to be cancelled, there's mercifully still some hockey happening, and some great stories at that. I'll get to this week's top fantasy targets in a moment, but first, let's look at a few of the best moments since last episode. Alex Ovechkin passed Dave Andreychuk with his 275th power play goal, moving into the top spot on the all-time list. The Blues and Wild played in the coldest winter classic to date, but the Blues showed up with some unbelievable beach-themed outfits and looked even better on the ice. Jordan Kyrou had 2 goals and 2 assists in a 5-goal second period, and the Blues hung on to win 6-4. If you missed the game, check out some of the awesome photos from those pregame fits to Ryan O'Reilly's custom skates and frozen beard. It was another great showcase for the league. And while I mentioned some of the negativity of COVID, one of the best stories in a while emerged over the weekend. The Vancouver Canucks assistant equipment manager Brian Hamilton asked for some help on social media to find a Seattle Kraken fan who sat behind the Canucks bench on October 23rd and showed him a message on her phone warning him that a mole on the back of his neck was cancerous. Hamilton got it checked out, and the fan turned out to be correct, potentially saving his life and allowing him to get it removed before the cancer spread. The team was able to track down the fan, a recent college graduate, Nadia Popovici, and they actually got the two together before Saturday's game. The Canucks ended up surprising her with a $10,000 scholarship to help fund her upcoming medical school studies. Hamilton mentioned his family, and his daughter were so grateful to Nadia and the fact that her efforts might have saved his life. What a story that is. Moving on to the fantasy portion of the episode, I'm going to share my top 3 waiver ads for Week 12. Thanks to all the cancellations, no team plays 4 times in Week 12, barring the league squeezing in some previously postponed games. So you can cast a pretty wide net with your pickups right now. One thing you should look into, though, is there are a few teams that only play once this entire week. So make sure if you need some production this week in a bad way, do not pick up the players that only have a single game. If you didn't see last episode where I shared some tips on how to deal with all these COVID cancellations, make sure you check that out as well. Let's get it started with players owned in 50% or fewer fantasy leagues. My top pick this week is Predators center Ryan Johansson, who is still owned in just 37% of Yahoo leagues, despite having 3 points in his last 2 games, bringing his season total to 27 points with 10 on the power play in just 30 games. The Predators play the Knights, Kings, and Coyotes this week, which is a pretty nice schedule that should allow him to keep churning out those points. Moving on to players owned in 30% of fantasy leagues or less, I'm targeting Blues forward Robert Thomas, owned in just 26% of Yahoo fantasy leagues right now. Just like Johansson, Thomas has 3 points in his past 2 games and at just under a point per game pace on the season with 25 points in his first 26 games. That includes 7 power play assists as well. The Blues will also play 3 games this week from Wednesday to Sunday. So Thomas could be a midweek pickup if you want to stream another player on Monday or Tuesday, or maybe run into some injury troubles early on in the week. Finally, players who should be available in almost every fantasy league this week for managers in very deep leagues. Out of players with 15% or less ownership, my last pick is a player who was expected to take a small leap on a new team this season, and until recently, he just hasn't been reaching those expectations. Hurricanes forward Jesperi Kotkaniemi started the season on the wing in Carolina as they hoped to squeeze him into their top 9, and he really struggled there, scoring just 8 points in his first 26 games, including an 8-game and a 5-game pointless streak. But the Canes have given Kotkaniemi more time at his natural center position on their 4th line recently while holding on to his power play spot, and he's been cruising ever since. Kotkaniemi is riding a 5-game point streak with 1 goal and 6 assists in that time. He's also averaged 3.5 hits per game the last 2 weeks, thanks to a 6-hit outburst, but you should be able to count on at least 1 hit a game from him and the odd power play point as well. As with Thomas, Kotkaniemi is well suited for a late week pickup. The Canes play a back-to-back on Friday and Saturday, so if you wanted to stream another player or two from Monday to Thursday, then jump on Kotkaniemi before the weekend. The Canes also play 3 games in the first 6 days of week 13. So if he continues to light it up, you could look to hold him into next week as well. And of course, if you're in a keeper league and he happens to be on those waiver wires, Kotkaniemi is still super young, so he would be somebody I'd be targeting right now as well. That's going to do it for today's episode. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on social media. As always, leave us any fantasy questions or feedback in the comment section below. I'm David Crosby, and as always, thanks for tuning in to NHL Quick Hits.